Video, I want to talk to you about why so many young men or men in general are kind of giving up with participating in the workforce and in society in general, right? For background to myself, anyone who's new to the channel, I've worked at some of these companies, been in the finance industry for over 10 years, and it's a trend that I have noticed is growing across society, right? Not just a workplace. So let's talk through what's actually going on here. So what we have here is a few articles I want to just briefly mention at the start, right? So we see that many young men are abandoning college degrees. You can see here, sure you've seen some of these articles. If you're a man who watched my channel, you mentioned this, you probably noticed this is some of the topics that I mentioned again and again about the impact of feminism, of cancel culture, of liberalism, attacking men, toxic masculinity type narratives, these type of aggressive narratives that do get pushed on men. It makes them less willing to go to college. If they have an interaction with a woman and it's a bit awkward or whatever, they could get cancelled or have their life and reputation ruined. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing would be the number of young men who have been, again, without college degrees in the last 30 years. It's actually far quicker growing trend than we can even notice, right? And this is an article that goes through it in more detail. So what you have here is a lot of people who are covering this in detail. It's become a major media talking point, although it's ignored because everything in society and Western culture is about pandering to women, pandering to feminism, or even weak liberal men. Anything that benefits men gets labeled toxic or misogynist or things like that, or inkwell and other things like that, red pill and so on. And then it mentions here just 71% of young men held a full-time job in 2021 compared to 1980. So that's a big drop. So from 85% to 71%, there's been a drop in men participating in the workforce. Now, it's very interesting how the mainstream media will cover it. They'll typically just portray men as being losers, which they've been doing for several decades now. Men are losers. Men are, playing video games at home. They're refusing to have responsibility. But society's effectively shunned men and emasculated them, demoralized them. So they shouldn't be surprised that their men are dropping out of society. If you have all this girl power, girl boss narrative, and at the same time you're demonizing men, don't be surprised when men are dropping out of society or don't want to participate. The social contract between men and women, between company and worker is completely broken. Same way between government and the masses of people is completely broken, so we shouldn't be surprised about people dropping out. And then we got more news articles about this. It's a matter of our national identity and things like that. So what I've realized is no one seems to care about men or how they're treated in society unless it starts impacting the economy, right? Because everything's about pandering to women, whether it's abortion rights, hiring and promoting women. There's all these targets. All the companies I've worked at have had specific hiring and promotion targets for women, not for men. The entire narrative that you have to endure throughout the day is that, anything a man could say could offend a woman. You could get cancelled, Me Too, trust all women, believe all women, the future is female. All these narratives are deliberately pushed by the powers that be to kind of emasculate and humiliate men who have had enough of this society and how it's operating against them effectively. So we're going to go through some reasons why this could be occurring. And here's an interesting content creator. He has a few channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Here's one of his smaller channels, and he mentions this in a bit of detail here. So let's have a listen.
I saw a lot of guys doing videos about how men are giving up. Men are giving up in it. And I think it's true. I think men are giving up. I thought I'd offer my thoughts as to why I think men are giving up and what's going on, which is that things are getting a lot harder. They're not getting easier, right? A lot of things that were sort of guaranteed, like getting a good job if you got good grades in school and you worked hard and you went to college, that's not guaranteed anymore. Or things like, hey, if you make some money, get a good job, and you go out and try to date, you're going to find a woman and she's going to be attracted to you and you're going to get married and have kids and all that stuff. That's not guaranteed either. In fact, the chances of you even just getting laid today as a man, unless you really have put in the effort to know what you're doing, they're pretty small. They're not very big at all. Like I said, when I did that video talking about how hard it is to get laid, it is hard. It's not an easy thing at all to do. All this stuff has gotten really hard. It's gotten really hard. Even, it's become a lot more like entrepreneurship, where you don't know what the results are. Even, like I said, in the workforce and in getting a job, you don't know that you're going to get a job just because you have skills.
So here's the first lesson, right, that we can learn from this. Men are giving up because this system is being deliberately rigged in a particular way against them. And I've seen this in the corporate environment where almost anything a man says or do, a woman can find offensive and go to HR and say she feel uncomfortable, or it's problematic, or it's toxic, the way he's conducting himself. A woman can basically turn any interaction in the workplace is something that is discriminating against her and in favor of men. If men are joking around, they're not including women in the communication, in the conversation, it could be negatively perceived. There's lots of hiring and promotion biases I mentioned throughout my other videos in favor of women. You know, a company I worked at, they wanted to have 40% of senior management to be women. Like 40% of, they weren't focused on like necessarily the most competent or meritocratic system, is more based on gender, DEI, things like that. So if you're going to have this rigged system where we don't have a meritocracy based hierarchy, but instead you don't have things based on competency, but based on gender identity, then that's going to disillusion men, because the only way men can succeed based on the way we work, which is logical, not emotional, is by working hard. You can progress through the system. Now, the system is narrowing the amount of opportunities that people have, the access to these opportunities, and there's lots of instability. There's no guarantee. Before, if you were in the middle class, you could have a decent middle class life. You might not be a multimillionaire, but you won't be poor, but you could maybe afford a house and have a wife and kids. But now even that has become kind of unaffordable to the middle class now. So there's a lack of stability. There's lots of instability, no guarantee of a decent basic quality of life. And what would be the solution here? I think part of the solution, even though I'm sure many of you are not going to like it, is to somehow lower your standards. And I don't mean lower your standards in all senses of the word. What I mean is a key phrase that I've heard a few times that I really try to remember, and it's called living a simple life of luxury. And I think that's the pursuit that myself and many other men out there are pursuing in some sense, is having a simple life of luxury. I don't necessarily want the biggest property. I'd rather have a bigger investment portfolio, so that's generating returns so I can live my life on my own terms. I don't necessarily need to have the most expensive things, but I do want things that are good for my health versus not good for my health. And that's how I decide to buy maybe certain clothing. I'm not buying the most expensive clothing brands and things like that. So there's all sorts of different considerations we can make there. And I think when I say lowering your standards, I mean adapting things, not playing into the social status roles where you have to have an expensive car or an oversized house. So that's part of the solution, because you're playing a rigged game in this society. I hope you understand this as men now from looking at some of these things. I remember speaking with some people, and they always tend to refer to this as an individual issue. Oh, it's individual men who have individual issues. Maybe these individual men have social anxiety, these individual men are depressed, or they have mental health issues. No, there's really a society-wide agenda by the establishment to demonize and emasculate men and push them out of positions of power and push them out the dialogue, because they're always going to be cancelled, and any opinion they have could be labeled misogynist or anti-woman or whatever. So there's clearly an agenda here. You won't have all these statistics and articles that I've shared with you, and even this discussion point here, and all these content creators covering the issues that men are dealing with, if there wasn't a reality to deal with there. Now, the second thing why men are kind of dropping out, because they're not dumb. They're not as dumb and naive as, let's just say, some other demographics. They can see that the 9-to-5 life is not a solution. It's being rigged. It's basically turned into daycare. As I've covered in my other videos, that work is kind of daycare these days. It's kind of not a place where you can succeed by being productive and effective. So many men are dropping out of society, dropping out of college and the workplace, because they're waking up to the fact that the 9-to-5 life does not pay off. So let's listen to some analysis here about this.
Essentially, that with compounding interest, if you're getting a 7 to 8% return in the stock market, you're just not going to get to the point that you want to get to be able to be financially free and retire while you're still young enough to enjoy it. Yes, by the time you're 60 or 70 years old, you're going to have a decent amount of money, but it's not even as great as what you think, because it's too slow, okay? And you're going to have inflation, right? And so this...
Now, what he's trying to explain here is if you follow the traditional path and do all the right things, even if you build up a sizable investment portfolio and you have those returns in the stock market of 5 to 8%, depending on what you're invested in, it's not quick enough. By the time you have enough money to retire, you know, you're old age, you can barely do the things you want to do that you find fun. You basically work like a slave your entire life to prop up a liberal, feminist, woke culture system that is completely destroying your life, destroying your ability to have a family and have a decent life. And you basically sacrificed your life to it just to save some money, invest it while you work a standard, boring, dead-end 9-to-5 job. So investing in the stock market is not necessarily a solution. Now, there's different investments you can have. I won't give any financial advice here. Nothing I say is financial advice. But you can, you know, if you invest in the stock market, invest in some crypto, some physical gold, things like that, physical metals, things like that. But you need another solution so you can generate higher income at a younger age, save and invest that, so you have more than enough money you need in your later age. So you're not dependent on kind of low stock market safe investments in equity and bonds. You need to generate larger sums of money so you can invest larger amounts at a younger age and become financially free, maybe pay off any property debt you have in terms of mortgages. You need another solution. The standard solution is not working. And a lot of these issues that men have about feeling uncomfortable in society, things like that, it's because men know at an underlying subconscious level, they're playing a rigged game. This system is full of lies, lying politicians, lying co-workers, lying managers, lying companies, lying recruiters. And what I'm trying to do through my content, even though, yes, I am here as a career coach to help people and help men specifically, but people in general, is to be a voice of someone who's giving you truth. Because you're constantly dealt with liars in society, gaslighting, manipulators, people who are trying to take advantage of you. And all I'm trying to do really in these content, in this video, which is, free videos I'm making essentially, is to kind of provide some honest advice, some honest critique, because you're not going to get it from most people. They're just going to try and go like, oh, how can I use you? Oh, can I just fool you and say you're going to get promoted next year and get a certain amount of more money in your salary? You're just being lied to throughout the day. That's why people, and particularly men, find it frustrating, because we're a bit more straightforward. We can see through all the lies and we don't want to play along with it. So let's look at here, right? If you wanted to save and invest and just live the standard life, you have to understand that inflation is really making it very difficult for you, right? To live even a basic life, have a wife, have a kids. And this is a good analysis with an inflation calculator of how it would work, how inflation is really destroying your ability and your future.
9 years old, 18 years from now, his $1 million will actually be only worth $641,000 in spending power, assuming a small inflation rate of 2.5%, which it could be a lot more than that. Okay. Now his $400,000 a year in tax-free dividends when he's 67 years old, that's in 2059. Okay. It's only worth $164,000 in purchasing power, of today's purchasing power. Okay. Which is not a horrible amount of money to have, but to do all that work and
what he's trying to explain here is how inflation, even if you invest your money and you're getting good returns from your savings accounts and your stock market investments, inflation is so aggressive right now, and it will be for the foreseeable future, I would say, that it's going to really destroy those savings and investments. That's why you need to think in a very adaptive type of way. You can't just think in one way, and I'll get to some solutions after this, but let's have a look at his further discussion on how inflation really is destroying your future.
Sacrifice to get to that point, and then hopefully you even make it to 67, which is not guaranteed, by the way, and you're putting your life on hold for all this time. It does not make a lot of sense to me. It really is a bad plan. And that's the second part of this. That why would you do this? Why would you hope? Is this really the best that you can hope for in life? I mean, maybe, at some point, yes, maybe I thought that the same thing because I was told this. And that's the problem, is you're told this. You're told to go to school, get good grades, get a job, put your money in your 401k. And then over time, eventually, when you're old enough, you'll be retired and you'll be able to actually live your life and enjoy it, which just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. Okay, there is a better way to do this.
So because the inflation rate is aggressive, you're being disadvantaged as a man in the corporate environment in terms of hiring and promotions because everything's in favor of women. The social dynamics, again, very feminist and not in favor of men. The inflation rate being high. So what I'd recommend all the men do now, right, Apart from other solutions, at an individual level, what you need to do is basically aggressively push for what you want for in life. Now, as I mentioned in some of my recent videos, you need to really figure out who you are, what you want as an individual man, because the social contract is broken, as I say, between yourself and the company you work for, between men and women, and all the dynamics between you and the government. So what do you actually want individually, right? So maybe that could be being self-employed, working remotely, living overseas, living in a low-cost off-grid location, growing your own food, working online. You need to think through these dynamics and think through the practicality and the individual solution for you, rather than waiting for a group solution at the government level and voting for a particular president or prime minister. You need to really aggressively push for what you want now rather than later. Don't put off your life forever thinking you're going to save and invest and then get promoted and then maybe you can live out your ideal life. Try to pull things forward. What you want to do in the future, try to do it now. I'm not saying you should do everything in your life now, but there's anything you're really... What I would recommend is that, experiences in life are worth more than just material possessions. So, for example, if you wanted to start a new healthy hobby, a new productive hobby, for example, training martial arts and getting some martial arts personal training sessions, you might be thinking, I'll put it off until I get promoted, I'll be making a bit more money, then I'll pay for those personal training sessions. I would recommend you look at your budget and maybe cut back in certain other areas and try to do it now, because time's always ticking and you don't want to do what most people are doing and they're putting off I'll travel after I retire, maybe I'll retire early and do this. Maybe try and live your life now. You got to pursue your goals and do all of that too, but don't keep putting off your life like most people do, and that's what leads to depression and men becoming more disillusioned and kind of depressed and not living the life that they want to live. I'm trying to do is provide a solution to 5% of people who are actually looking for an individual solution. They're not trying to kid themselves that they're going to be able to change the entire system, but you can change your life. I'll give you an example of a client that I managed to help. Now, one of my clients, they were looking for a remote job, but they wanted to work in a major bank. They wanted to work in crypto. And I was mentioning, getting all these type of things aren't necessarily optimal. You might not be able to get all those type of options. You need to be a bit flexible. And if we think about the priorities, because when you pick a career, you pick a lifestyle, which is one of the phrases I've had for my channel. If your main priority is having that life flexibility, then you might have to prioritize one thing over the other. So in the end, through helping with my client, I managed to find them a remote job. It wasn't in crypto or a major financial firm, because major financial firms, they want more people in the office than working remotely. Crypto is quite volatile and there was a job opportunity available, but then that was no longer available. So they managed to get a remote job working in finance. Now, this has given them massive lifestyle benefits. They can spend more time focusing on their health and their family and other things. So this is what I mean. You can find an individual solution, and that's what you should focus on rather than a group solution. So I'm here to provide you with individual solutions, not group solutions. I have a link in the description where I can provide you with some direct career advice and assist you with your career and finance goals. Feel free to check the link in the description for that. Thanks for listening. Leave your comments below about your thoughts and 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. I'll see you next time.